South Africa right now is an emerging market mixed economy that is driven by both the public and private sector. But private capital is more dominant than state capital. So while capitalism is a more dominant economic ideology in our country, we have strong strands of Marxist communism in our politics. Given our level of economic development, what economic ideology should we be following, and what role should the state be playing in the economy?
I think the best answer is provided by a guy called Francis Fukuyama. And he's a world-renowned socio-political analyst. And part of what made him famous was in the late 80s. He's the one who saw the end of communism coming. He said, it's about to happen and watch out. And he was right. And he came to South Africa shortly before COVID. And he said, you know what the ideology is you need in South Africa? I'm paraphrasing here. But he said, the ideology you need in South Africa is a value for money ideology. When you are thinking about your government, should it be bigger, should it be smaller? This exact left-right definition that I gave comes, he endorses it. He says, you are missing half of the story. The other half of the story is the government high quality or is it low quality? So, and you go department by department. If a government department is able to deliver, you must give it money because people need the things that it's delivering. But if a government department is not able to deliver, then you have to cut some of the money away from that thing to the point where the amount you're spending and what you're getting line up. And it's a hard thing to hear, but I think if you think about how you spend your own money, if you go to a place and you're buying something for 50 Rand, and you're buying lunch or something, and it's a good meal, it's filling you up, it's healthy, you're like, okay, well, 50 Rand's a lot of money, but I'm happy with this. If you spend 50 Rand and you get a packet of crisps, that's a problem.
Value for money.
So his thing is, just look how much are you spending and how much are you getting in return. That's the equation. And in that way of thinking, in some countries, you'll say, well, maybe we should actually have more government. We should spend more money, more tax, more involvement. In other countries, we should have less. Then he did the numbers, and I'd re-updated those numbers at the start of this year. If you look at the graph of the size of the government relative to all economic activity, it went from about 20% to 40%. So of every Rand that's made in a year, it's now 40 cents go to the government. 20 years ago, it was 20 cents. So the government has, in that sense, doubled in size. It's taking twice as much. So the graph goes up like this. But if you look at the quality as rated by the World Bank of service delivery, we were in 2000, that transition in Mbeki, Mandela, we were in the top 20% in the world. Now it's come down. Now we in the middle of the pack of the whole world. So there's many countries that are worse. Half of the countries are worse, but half are better. And if you look at that rate of decline, it is one of the fastest rates of decline. The ability to handle corruption is the worst because it means you're taking tax, more tax is being taken, and more of it is going to state capture. And when you see that graph making that X of getting the government's taking more money, but it's wasting more money, that take more, waste more thing is what Francis Fukuyama was saying. Your ideology in that situation should be to cut back. Then if you get a good government going, good bureaucracy, good home affairs, whatever, then you can start looking at building it up again, investing more. But first you have to discipline it. When it's in a tax more, take more system, it's you've got to cut it back.
You've answered a bit of this question, but I'll ask you anyway. Why did the ANC fail to build a capable developmental state that is able to manage its state-owned entities efficiently? Because these companies are crucial for South Africa's infrastructure development and international competitiveness.
Yeah, it's a tough question because there were people in the ANC that really were smart and capable and wanted to do this. I think of Finance Minister Trevor Manuel.
Yes.
And when I was in high school, I learned to read newspapers, reading his explanations of why is he doing this in the budget.
Yes.
What a brilliant guy. and just an example of many ANC loyalists who wanted to build a capable state but failed. One thing you can say is personality. You can say someone like Jacob Zuma came along and he ruined the party. But I think if you say one bad apple, you're only getting a small part of the story. Another thing you can say, a bad apple from private sector, the Guptas or the Ruperts or whatever people like to choose, I think. I think the deeper story is this. When the ANC came to power, for some time, they were able to facilitate a real increase in the standard of living of most South Africans. 3 million jobs were added in the 2000s. More than 12 million houses received piped water and electricity. In the 90s, in the early 90s, for every brick house built in this country, there were 10 shacks built in a year. By 2007, for every shack that was built, there were 10 brick houses being built. So, you know, the oppression of apartheid was being undone. It was a lived thing. People's lives were improving. That was good. And some of the people in the ANC saw, if we keep going this way, we will keep holding on to power. But that same story I was saying of fighting the last war, the moves that the ANC had made in order to achieve that success was appropriate for that time. Then came a new time, and you needed a new strategy. You needed a shift in strategy. And the shift that needed to take place, in my opinion, was one from more state-led development to a more private, greater role for the private sector. The reason that needed to happen was because the ANC had over-accelerated its cadre deployment program. The rate at which people in the civil service, people working for government, Home Affairs, police, army, hospitals, whatever, because the ANC didn't like the old white people working in many of those roles, they drove many of them out. Golden handshakes, retrenchments, very fast cadre deployment to get people in. Not all of them black, some of them white, some of them, but just people with new values. Cadre deployment was initially the idea you want people running the show who love the new South Africa, not the old South Africa. It had a good idea at the start, but it happened too quickly in terms of losing the institutional knowledge, how to run Eskom properly, how to run PRASA, Transnet properly. Then once it had been so quick, of course mistakes will be made. The ANC needed to adjust and say, okay, now we need a bit of time to actually see in this department, who's the bad apple? Jackie Celebi, he's a bad apple. Let's get rid of him. Let's get a good station command, a good chief of police, national commissioner to run the show, regardless of race. But it will take time to figure that out. In the meantime, let the private sector do more to add value. And I can get into practical terms, how the private sector can do more to help the poorest South Africans who are still stuck in the shadow of apartheid. But rather than take that idea up, they thought, you know what worked last year will work next year. And last year what worked was just a little bit more cadre deployment, just a little bit more state involvement, just a little bit more red tape. And then cadre deployment went from this nice idea to this terrible idea. Then the increased tax went from helping the poor to helping a few rich people stuff their pockets. And then things got worse. Then the ANC said, what shall we do? Then they said, well, let's do a little bit more of the same thing, because for us, it's actually working quite nicely. So that vicious cycle started to play out that we've seen in South America, that we've seen in East Asia, in many countries, in Africa as well. And unfortunately, South Africa's democracy has proved resilient. And those party members of the ANC, like Trevor Manuel, that always had the best interest in the country, I think, at heart, have come to the fore in their way and said, now let's try something new. So this year, for the first time, we really are seeing something new. It is not bearing fruit yet, But it's an interesting time to be looking at the political situation for opportunities to grow.